Well, there's always a good time when you can sit down and have a smoke with someone you enjoy their work and really, in a crazy sort of way, have a lot in common. I think like I am the Wish version of Pete Johnson here. I've got my tattoos. I grew up in LA. I think we hung out in the same spots and everything, and I'm enjoying a nice Tatuaje Kohonu 2015. The man, the founder, the owner, the creator, Tatuaje Cigars. Pete, thanks for hanging out with us today.
No, thanks for having me, man. That you brought up some great memories just thinking about Los Angeles and the
Yeah.
tattoos, but the wish version is awesome.
I am
Um,
definitely it's like this is what you see in the ad, you're what they see, and this is what comes in the mail.
I love how everybody knows Wish though. Like I
Well,
learned about Wish when I came to Miami because
they
for some
sponsored
reason
like
my Cuban relatives they all order from Wish instead of Amazon.
enough said, enough said. And welcome to Miami. I'm in Miami. I moved from LA about 10 years ago. You just moved out here. So how do you like it? How's Miami?
Yeah, no, it's good, man. Like it's hot and humid sometimes, but I'm getting used to the weather. I've been here now for a while. I didn't fully commit until about 5 years ago,
Right.
but I've been down here for a long time. My wife told me, she goes, "You live here, but you just haven't figured it out yet."
I think, well, see, I'm
So
Cuban, so I think it's the law. At some point in our lives, there's some sort of treaty that we have to live an aspect of our lives in Miami. So let
yeah, it's funny that you say that because I don't speak Spanish well, but I also don't say I speak Spanish. I speak Cuban.
right, well, and you will trust me. It's as the Mexicans would say, "A huevo." You're gonna have no choice, brother, because everywhere you go,
Yeah.
It's Spanish first here in Miami. So listen, so let's start from the beginning here. And the one question I always love to ask people on the blend is, how did the cigar find you? Because I don't think we find it; it finds us. And how did the cigar find Pete Johnson?
Yeah, did a I was watching a TV show, like one of these Entertainment Tonight type of things, Mary Hart or whatever, and they were talking about a charity event where everybody was getting together and they were enjoying cigars. And I was like, well, that looks kind of relaxing. And I went to a liquor store in Los Angeles and I bought a like a cheap Bearing cigar. Remember the brand Bearing?
Oh yeah, oh
I
yeah.
bought a Bearing and I smoked it over like a 2 day period, which is kind of funny, which is something you won't do now, right? But I remember sitting out on my patio for like about an hour or so, and I smoked really slow back then, and it was about an hour, and I was just like at peace, like it was just so peaceful, like away from everything, not thinking about anything else, and it kind of bit me hard. I went down the rabbit hole after that, and I started going into cigar stores and saving up a little bit of money that I had back then to buy like a couple cigars here and there, and then eventually buying a box. So it bit me in 1992, actually, 1991, actually, when I first started smoking. And then, fast forward to 1993, that's when I started working in the industry. So, but yeah, the rabbit hole was deep for me.
So Pete, I think we've had a lot of great people on this show, and you're like an original story because it's not like your uncle or your dad or you grew up in the family. You
Yeah.
were a kid from Maine who moved to LA because you wanted to be a musician, right? You were
Yeah.
like in a metal band, right?
Yeah. Hard rock, heavy metal. Yeah.
And
I
so
moved to LA because I really wanted to explore the music career. And then I realized that the music industry was kind of like not great. So I found heaven in the cigar industry.
I bet, and I tell you what, what a time to be in LA. To me, when I grew up there, in the '90s, the boom of cigars, that rock
Hmm.
and roll lifestyle. It to me, it was a great introduction to this lifestyle and to the people. So you were working in the industry. Where did you work?
I worked for a store called Gus's Smoke Shop. It was a small. That was my first job. Gus's Smoke Shop was a small store on Ventura Boulevard
Like right
in
behind the
Sherman Oaks.
counter, selling stuff at the cat.
Yeah, I was actually mixing their pipe tobaccos early on, and then eventually working the humidor. The humidor was like, a 10 by 10 closet. It wasn't that big. Actually, it might have been smaller than that. But and then eventually I ended up at this place called the Grand Havana Room, where I became the director of retail for them. For about 9 years, I worked there. But in the time that I was at the Grand Havana Room, I actually started the brand. So for 3 years, the first 3 years of the brand, I actually continued working at Grand Havana because I wasn't sure if I could afford to do one or the other. Um, yeah, I wasn't sure if I was ready to jump ship and kind of go off on my own completely. Luckily, the owner of the Grand Havana was really kind to me and kind of let me build my company slowly. So it was good.
I love it. I love it. I think I've always said, great leaders want their employees to grow. They don't want to stifle them. That's how you can tell you great
Yeah,
leaders are.
I
Is that
agree.
did that affect you now that you run a company? Is that sort of did that leave like a little footprint in your sort of entrepreneurship?
Absolutely, because the gift that he gave me by letting me do my thing, and then when I told him, I said, "Listen, I have to move on because the cigar company is growing, and I need to concentrate on it." He's like, "Go ahead, like there's nothing stopping you." And I've had a few employees come and go over the years, and it's always like, I found an opportunity. I'm like, dude, take the opportunity. Like, take the opportunity because it's better for you. It's better for your family. It's better for your growth. This was just a stepping stone. Tatuaje is a small ship. There's not a lot of room for growth as far as managerial positions go, because it's like right below me is like only a couple people, so it's not like they're gonna grow too far in the company. But there's a lot of opportunities out there for them to be creative and grow. And I've always been welcoming. If they need to leave, then go for it. And they've done really well, so I'm happy about that.
That's great. It's sort of like we talk about it like in the NFL, like the coaching trees, where you've got the Pete Johnson coaching trees, the Perdomos, the Padron coaching trees of people. Now, I think you met easily the guy who's on the Mount Rushmore of cigars, and it sort of changed and got you your start. So you go from the Grand Havana Room, you're doing your thing, and then it's sort of the seminal moment was when you meet who?
Pepin Garcia. Like again, with Pepin though, he was introduced to me by a friend in L.A. This guy named Ben Gehrman,
Mm-hmm.
who was a sales rep for an old cigar company called Villazon, which used to own Punch and Hoya de Monterrey before they sold to General Cigar, obviously. And Ben's the one that called me and said, "Hey, we got this new guy in from Cuba that might be able to make you a cigar." And they said, "We're going to come out to LA and we're going to meet with you and we're going to see if we can roll you some things." And it was Pepin, and no one knew who he was. And they didn't, he obviously didn't know who I was. But as soon as I had that, brief conversation about his history and where he came from, and I was like, I want what's in your head on paper. I want to put that into a cigar because ultimately I wanted to make a Cuban style cigar. That's really what I wanted to go for. I really wanted people to see what was different, like how we could make a cigar different than what was on the market already, and kind of model it after Cuba, which was obviously still illegal for us to have.
Right.
Um, so Tatuaje in general was my interpretation of a Cuban cigar from like the 70s, when they had a little bit more punch, a little bit more flavor. And it was the magic moment when I was the lucky guy in the room that met this guy first. So Tatuaje ended up being the first production cigar that the family ever made. Even before they made their own brand, Tatuaje was the first production cigar. And fast forward now, 20 years, it's our 20th anniversary. I'm I'm very much part of the family. I'm married to his daughter.
Right. Yes.
They're it's definitely a family thing for us, and I'm their longest standing client, that's for sure.
Did it's almost like you don't know what you don't know. Did you have any sense when, I mean, it's Don Pepin freaking Garcia and he's making you a cigar, you know what I mean?
Yeah, again, no one knew about him. Like, no one knew who he was. He was brand new. I always like to say that there's people in Cuba that became Havana famous Because when you're in Havana, there's a spotlight put on you. Pepin never wanted to leave his hometown, which is in the center of the island. He
Hmm.
never became Havana famous. Like you would have to know that there's some guy in the center of the island making great cigars, and that's the only way you'd hear about him. You know, like hey, like a whisper, like oh, there's a guy, but he's like 6 hours away,
Right.
that type of thing. So when he came in, it was kind of like blind to everybody. Like no one knew who he was. All my mentors in the business were questioning, like, "Are you sure this guy's good for you?" And I'm like, "Nah." I go, "The proof is in the pudding." He sat down, he rolled me a cigar, and that's the cigar that told me that's the one that I'm going to put my name on because to me it was like he nailed it. Like it was just from a brief conversation of like what I liked, and I was like, I like what you used to do. Like
Amazing.
you made Cuban cigars for all your life. I want what's in your head. And yeah, it was the right time and the right place at the right time.
Now you're seeming to me like an old school guy, like an old soul, and I think old world for a new generation. That's sort of the motto, the motto, the mantra of
Yeah.
Tatuaje. Where did that come from? I mean, because obviously rock and roll guy moves to LA. Old world, old school doesn't seem to jive with that.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I think it probably comes from my parents because my parents are like they do antiques. That's
Hmm.
what they. So I was really into antiques when I was a kid, and I love history. Um, and of course, when it came to cigars, to me, the history is in Cuba, and that was the whole thing. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I just want to try to make better wheels.
Right.
So yeah, I just love the history of where they came from, and I don't think there's a reason to change much of it. And I love, there's a lot of people that have passed in our industry that I still have a lot of memories of and being around. And I don't know, I'm still kind of part of the old guard because a lot of those guys that took care of me when I was younger, I still have a lot of respect for
Yeah.
them. And some of them are still around, some of them are gone, but it means a lot for me to carry on their traditions.
Now I'm going through your, if we did a resume here of Pete Johns, first of all, we got musician, then we got cigar maker. And now you're doing you did sort of a love letter, I think, to the cigar industry, in that you made a movie. You made a movie called Hand Rolled. What
Yeah,
and it's I've seen it, truth be told, a million times. Just because it is a great history of the cigar, of how it got there in Cuba, and all its travels through the United States and in Latin America. Was that Why did you do that?
I always thought that the industry needed like a really good commercial to kind of tell the world that we're not a cigarette industry.
Hmm.
And when I met these guys, Jesse and Steve, the directors, and Serge, the musical director, um, they kind of listened to the concept that I had because I'm big into documentaries in general, and I love things like Chef's Table, and I love wine documentaries. And I had them watch a few of these things that I was really into. I said, if you can do something like this, and it's about the storytelling, it's about
Yeah.
learning the history of these families, I think it's going to be a good thing. I think the FDA thing potentially could go away, so that could end up dating the documentary a little bit. But in general, it's a nice history lesson of just pre-embargo to now.
I,
And
I would I would I would recommend it to anybody. It's called Hand Rolled. It's on YouTube. It was on Apple, I think, for a minute. I first saw it on Amazon, but yeah, it's a great sort of story, and it's great to see Jose Padron's in it. A lot,
yeah,
all
yeah.
the heavy hitters are in it. That had to be amazing, just to be able to put all that on film, and to tell that story.
Well, I mean, again, I was the executive producer, but an executive producer is just a guy that literally gives opinions and writes checks.
Right, right.
Um, but every time the guys would show me a little bit of footage, I just kept on giving them more because I wanted to see this thing come to a finish line. Because it is important to tell the history, and I'm happy that we were able to get Jose Orlando on film before he passed away.
Yeah, yeah. some of the stories that he tells in that movie. I mean, it gives you
Yeah.
goosebumps there. So and now you're in the wine as well, of course. I mean, am I going to see you on the moon next? I mean, what's going on? Do
No, no.
you sleep? Do
The
you sleep
wine.
up?
I don't sleep a lot.
I don't think you sleep. I think you just hang upside down in the closet and recharge, right?
Yeah, I don't sleep a lot, but it's funny because the wine thing I did for a brief period. It was more of a vanity project. Everybody thought I was leaving the cigar industry to be a winemaker, but I just wanted to test my blending skills, and that's really where the wine thing came into to play because it's really a testing your palate to see if you can create good things off of something you don't know. And when I started with cigars, I knew what cigars I liked and what I didn't like, but I didn't really know tobacco that well. So when it came to working with the family, it was really about what I liked on my palate.
Right.
Now I know a little bit more and I can, translate a lot of that to what I want to put together. But, early on it was kind of like this is good and this is shit. I'll stick with the good. And that's
Good
kind of what I
idea.
did with wine. It's more of a challenge.
What so 20 years of Tatuaje now, 2003 was your first release. What's next for you guys? What's next for you? Where do you go from there? Because you got to be constantly building and constantly recreating, right? Or reinventing.
Yeah, we're I mean, we have a lot of good projects coming up over the next year and a half, 2 years actually. But I think we all just want to continue on and get to 30 and 40 and 50. Um, this is the home where I put my hat, and I hope to be here for a long time.
Oh,
And I hope that I said jokingly when I was younger that it'd be kind of cool. Like if you remember guys like Avo, people would walk around the trade show and say, "Oh, that's Avo," like, and that's old man Avo, and they'd be walking around or eventually in a chair, or that's the old man Padron. It'd be kind of like I made the joke earlier on. I said I want to be walking around the show with a cane when I'm 80, and hey, that's old man tattoo, stuff like that. So
that's
I want
that's
to I want to
Tatuaje
stay
over
true
there.
to staying true to the family and staying true to the original goal, which was to create a good product and ride off in the distance, but to be here for a long time.
You still writing songs, still making music?
No, no, not really. I still have my guitars. I pick them up every once in a while, but not not doing any music right now.
And
It's kind of
before,
part of my history. I don't
right.
know, like it's still there, but I don't dabble in it as much as I should.
Where before I let you go, where is I mean, we always talk about the boom of the 90s. Where is the business right now? Where is the industry? Is it in a good place? I mean, to me, it's super popular, obviously, because of social media, lots of influencers, and you can take that good or bad that are constantly promoting products. Where is the business right now?
I mean, as far as the consumer culture goes, I think the culture is really strong. And and I mentioned this last year to someone that I think we're finally seeing this gap that was in this bridge kind of come together with father and son, or you know, or daughter and mother, or like there's people in my generation that have been smoking a long time, but the kids that we were around weren't old enough to smoke, and they're finally becoming old enough to smoke. So you're starting to see a lot of the younger generations of the cigar industry families come in. Like if you see Lito Gomez's kids are involved, you see Christian Eiroa's kids, you see the Padrones kids that are involved.
Cuevas is
My
yeah.
father kids are involved. So you're seeing this bridge that gap in that bridge that's finally getting put together, and I think it's just making the industry stronger and the culture stronger. I mean, obviously the pandemic, when everybody was sitting at home doing nothing and smoking a lot of cigars, that made the culture really strong. But I think there's a long carryover from that.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I always say that there's a couple bad seeds out there, but in general, I think the industry is on a good path, and I hope that we continue our battles with the FDA in the good on the good side instead of the bad. I think we're way ahead of a lot of those battles right now. So we're in a good position.
Yeah, just like sometimes you get some bad seeds in tobacco. It doesn't, the whole crop. You got to look at it as a whole. Well, listen, as long as you're in the forefront, Pete, I know we're going to be in good shape. Thanks for hanging
I
out with me.
appreciate that.
Thanks for again, you're one of the people in the business that I can relate to more than anything because again, it's I feel we have so much in common, and I appreciate you hanging out with me. And again, the Wish version says thank you.
No, thank you, Jim. Appreciate it.
That's Pete Johnson of Tatuaje.
Take care, guys.